here. There we go. So how you doing? Thank you for
Oh,
coming
good.
on.
Yeah, absolutely. I love coming on and sharing my story because it's a good one.
So Jen is actually in our Thrive program, or a graduate of said program, and well, she's working in it right now. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us, about where you were when you actually decided to join the program, and we can even talk about that funny little story that we went through together to get you into the program first things.
Yes. Okay. So I live in Saskatchewan, Canada. I have two daughters now. One of my oldest is 3 and my youngest is just 9 months. And I am a dental hygienist, like kind of by trade. I've been doing that for 8 years here in Saskatchewan. I've really, really enjoyed it. I've found it very fulfilling as a career until the pandemic hit. And then I just felt like, okay, this really isn't what I had signed up for anymore. Made me really nervous. Like, you're literally covered in people's spit when you leave. So it's like, I don't really want to bring that home and chance, spreading that to my kids or getting it myself. But I'll rewind to when I first had my first daughter, Brooke. She's now 3, like I said. Right from the beginning, like dragon baby. So she had colic, she had reflux, she had a tongue tie. Yeah, and I think so. It, as a first-time mom, was not awesome. Her kind of like witching hours were between 5 and 9 p.m. So, and I'm normally not a very anxious person. I never have been. I've never really struggled with anxiety before. But once I had Brooke, like as the day went, like I'd be good in the morning. And as it got closer to 5 p.m., I could just feel my anxiety rising. My husband was working out of town at the time, and I was thankfully lucky enough to have my mom basically live with me for the first 3 months of Brooke's life. However, when Nolan would come home from work, she would obviously go home and it would be us here. So we had, the 3 a.m. fights. And me and my husband were not the couple that yelled at each other. We just weren't. It was always, we would talk it out. We wouldn't, but yeah, there we were, exhausted and tired and stressed out. Sorry, just go see Daddy, okay? Bye. Sorry, guys. Yeah, yelling at one another in the middle of the night. It was not great. It was not like what I thought motherhood was going to be. I have lots of friends that have kids who had kids before I did. My sister also has 3 children. So I was very involved in their lives. And I was like, I got this. Like, I'm a mom, or I'm an auntie to 3 girls. And then my best friend has 3 of her own. Like, please, I know what motherhood's about. And then I had Brooke and I was like, did I make a mistake? Like, should I have done this? Because this is awful. My mom, my sister, and my grandma all had a really hard time breastfeeding. So my entire pregnancy, I told myself, it'll be fine if you can't breastfeed. It'll be formula. It's fine. Your nieces are thriving and they're great. No pressure. But of course, once I had Brooke, that all changed. I am not a person who likes to fail or be bad at things. So my breastfeeding journey was awful. It was awful. I, right from the beginning, tried to breastfeed. Brooke was very miserable. Her latch was awful. My nipples were raw as raw can be. They were bleeding every time, and like scabbed. And every time she would latch, it would hurt. So what we ended up having to do in the hospital was I would get her to latch, and then there would be a syringe with formula with a little tiny tube that we would sneak into the corner of her mouth. So then while I was trying to breastfeed, my husband would slowly, or my mom, once we were at home, would slowly push the formula into her mouth, because I was told you do not want her having nipple confusion. So I'm like, okay, so not only is this excruciatingly painful, Brooke would latch for like 5 seconds, unlatch and scream in my face. I was crying. She was crying. It was terrible. And then I had to try and get this little tube in her mouth, and she would unlatch, and then we'd have to try again. And like, you remember a newborn wakes up and like eats like every 2 or 3 hours, right? So then I was like, okay, I'm going to get a pump. And the breastfeeding consultant told me I can pump to increase my milk supply. So then I was like, okay, so she'd wake up, I'd put her on my boob, we'd sneak in this little tube, we would feed her, which would take probably an hour to try and get all of that going. And then I would go and I would pump, which would take me another 40 minutes. And then they told me you need to be feeding her every 2 hours. So then I'm like, okay. So then I had 15 minutes. And then I'm like, okay, well, let's do it again. Well, then of course my breasts were completely empty because I just pumped them out, so I wasn't really getting it, but they kept telling me no. Like, I would even go for appointments at the lactation consultant's office. I would bring the pump, I would bring all the syringes and tubes, we would do it there with them, and they're like, this is great, this is going to work, you just need to get on this medication. Okay, so then I started the medication that is supposed to bump up your milk supply as well. Yeah. And then, so there I am. And I think I did this for 6 straight weeks, and it was terrible. I remember during the day, I'd be out on the couch and my mom would be like, well, go nap, because I have Brooke. But I didn't want to be alone. So I was like, no, like, I'm lonely. I don't want to be by myself. And I had Brooke in January, and here in Saskatchewan that winter, the entire month of February was minus 50 degrees Celsius or colder with the wind chill. So we weren't leaving the house. Nobody was coming to visit. We couldn't go for walks. I couldn't get outside. I was like depressed. It was awful. Every time Brooke would wake up, I would just be mad because I knew she needed to eat, but I didn't want to have to go through like this whole rigmarole of trying to feed her. I felt like a failure. I remember I'd be like sobbing in the shower, and my mom just looking at me one day and being like, and my mom's like a pediatric nurse, and she's just like, Jen, you need to stop. Like, you need to stop. And I was like, but I can't, because I said this will work. And she's like, stop, because like, you're a shell of yourself. So I was like, okay. So then I was like, hey, I'm done. I'm going to stop this pumping. Because when I pumped, I would get 1 or maybe 2 ounces total out of both breasts. Like, I had like no milk supply. So I was like, I hate this pump. I hate the sound of this pump. I hate where I sit to pump. Like, I had like this area of my living room I just hated, and I never wanted to be there. And I had Brooke like in a little pop-up bassinet on our bed in between me and my mom. And anytime she would stir, I was mad because I'm like, I don't want to feed you. And then I started formula feeding, and it got so much better. However, we were still dealing with the reflux, and we were still dealing with the colic. And then now we're dealing with like constipation and like digestive issues on that way, because the formula, it's just thicker. So now we're trying to figure out, okay, does she have like a milk protein on it? So I think we went through like 5 different formulas on recommendation of my doctor. So I'm like, holy man, is this ever gonna get easy? Is this ever gonna be fun? Or like, and me and my husband were both to the point where we were like, I don't think that we should have done this. Like, are we bad parents? Like, why are we failing? What are we doing wrong that our daughter is struggling so hard? Because my sister never went through this. My best friend never went through this. I'd never heard of anybody else. I was in a mom group, and I was the only mom in that entire group that was formula feeding. Everybody else was breastfeeding. And I was like, so I felt so lonely in that sense as well. And then also my daughter, her sleeping was still just terrible. So I bought the Baby Whisperer book. I bought the Ferber Method book. I bought one other sleep training book. I followed sleep training techniques I'd found online. And when my daughter was about 18 months old, I had hired a sleep consultant that was local here in Saskatchewan. And basically it was like $250 or $300. I got access to her for 1 week over an app called Voxer, which is basically like a walkie-talkie app. And then it was like a very PDF form version of a sleep plan. So we got rid of Brooke's soother using that sleep consultant, but we didn't get rid of her habitual wakes that had then like instilled themselves in Brooke's brain because she would wake up looking for her soother. We got rid of the soother, but she couldn't help us with like these wake ups. And then the week was done. And then it was like, okay, but like, what do we do now? And she's like, well, if you want more help, you have to pay another $200. So I'm like, okay. So then we left it. So I'm like, I'm not paying you another $200. You didn't even help me do anything the first time.
A consultant who can't help with sleep. That's convincing.
Yeah. And like, she never asked me about Brooke's health. She never asked me about our background. She just basically said, what's going on right now? So I'm like, well, I have this 18-month-old. She wakes up multiple times a night. She looks for her soother. I have to go in there. And then she's like, okay, this is what we're going to do. So she never even, like, looking back on it, she never got our background. Never asked, like, how long has she been on her soother for? Was she formula fed? Was she breastfed? Like, nothing. She's like, not even like, do you have a sound machine or a nightlight in there? Like, she didn't really ask any questions. It was just like, cool. I'm just going to scroll down on my computer, find my 18-month-old sleep plan. I'll send it to you. Is basically what it was. And it didn't help at all. So at this point, I think I was still waking up with Brooke like 5 times a night. And to the point, like, it's not just like she'd wake up and cry and I would wake up. I'd have to go in there because she would scream and cry to the point, and she was still in her crib. So she'd be hitting her head on the railings of the crib. And it was just like awful. So I was getting no sleep and I was already back to work. I remember going to work and I didn't get to sleep until 4 a.m, and I had to be at work by 8, which means I had to be up by 6:30. And I was just like a zombie that entire day at work. I remember thinking, like, I'm not having another kid. I'm not doing this again. Me and my husband always wanted 2 kids. I wanted 3. And then I was like, okay, we're having 1. Like, I'm done. This is dumb. I want to sleep again. When is this going to happen? And then I got pregnant with our second. And I remember I was sitting on my couch pregnant. I was looking at the back of Brooke's head because she was watching TV. And I was thinking to myself, oh my God, how am I going to do this with a husband that works out of town for 2 weeks at a time, with a kid that's waking up 3 or 4 times a night still, and then a newborn who's going to be waking up every 2 to 3 or 4 hours to eat, depending on, you know, what happens. And I remember just sitting there and I just like started crying because I was so scared. And that was probably, I would have to say, my first anxiety attack I've ever actually had, because the thought of that, I've always been a person who really values her sleep. Like, even since I was a baby, my mom said, like, she would have to wake me up to eat and then I'd fall right back to sleep. And I was just like, don't bother me. Like, even when I was in like elementary school and I had to get up for the before and after school program, I'd be like all morning. I was so mad that I had to be awake. And my husband's the same way. Like, we could sleep in until 1 p.m. to this day. If somebody would let us, easy. So you can imagine how terrified I was, because at this point it was like 2 years or just over 2 years of waking up at least 4 times a night, at least. So I remember being like, I need help. And I don't know if any of you have experienced this with social media, especially Facebook, but it's like you think about aliens and then all of a sudden your newsfeed is all aliens. Even though you didn't say it out loud, you just like thought it. So then I opened up my Facebook because I was going to go find some mom groups to be like, does anyone have any tips? And then this like BeBaby ad like went across my screen and I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. And it was for the 9-day free seminar, just like we're doing right now. You got a resource person, you got a workbook. And I remember thinking, like, this can't be right. Like, this has to cost money, because remembering that sleep consultant that I hired, I had to pay an extra $200 for a little bit more help. I'm like, who would give out 9 days of free information and a workbook that you get to keep and reference whenever you want? Plus you get somebody to talk to. Yeah, I know this is a scam, but I was like, I'm going to go for it. So I went for it. And it was a game changer. I was just like, oh my God, everything you said, Sam, just like resonated with me, with like postpartum depression, motherhood loneliness, how your motherhood journey should be like full of like ease and flow and people that are there to support you. And I had none of that because nobody understood what I was going through. I was completely alone. And when you tell people like, oh yeah, my kid wakes up a lot in the night, they kind of go, okay, all kids do. Like, it'll stop. Just wait, it'll stop. And I remember I said to my husband, like, when though? Because she's like 2 and she's still awful. Like, do we have to wait till she's like 7? Because no. So then, yeah, I really enjoyed my first seminar, but I was busy with Brooke, whatever. So then I was like, okay, I remember I messaged my resource person because I was behind in all of the replays and I couldn't catch up. So I'm like, do you guys do this again? So she's like, yes, we'll be doing another one next month. And I was like, perfect. Let me know, remind me, sign me up. So I actually did 2 of these seminars. And then I was very much that person that was like, no, we can't afford this. No, we can't afford this. Because by this point, I'd already had Bryn and I was on maternity leave. So we were just on my husband's salary. And he had, in that amount of time, got laid off. And I think it was like a total of 8 months he'd been laid off. And he was just getting back to work. And we have, you know, the bills everyone has, a mortgage payment, a car payment, a cell phone bill. You know, we have all the responsibilities. We have debt. We have, like, I have student loans, you know, all these things. And I remember talking to him. He's like, there's no way we can swing that. Like, I'm just getting back to work. I haven't had a paycheck yet. And I'm like, I know, but like, I need this though. Like, I can't keep going. I was like driving to the grocery store and sobbing because Bryn was, I want to say Bryn was like 2.5 months. Thank God she didn't have colic like Brooke did. She was pretty chill. But as we got closer and closer to that 4-month mark, I was like, I cannot do sleep regressions by myself because you're out of town. I'm here alone. Brooke sucks at sleeping. And then I'm going to have a newborn. Like, I'm going to have Bryn going through her. Like, no, I can't. So he's like, okay, well, so then I got on a call, which I forgot about. So I was in my car for my very first call with my resource person and Sam. And I remember we pulled up to my parents' house and I stayed in the vehicle. I think we chatted for like another 40 minutes. I left that call feeling really, really good. And then talked to my husband. And then, of course, he had his doubts. He talked me out of it, whatever. So then I messaged my resource person being like, can't do it. We're on like one income. And she's like, no, like Sam is like a magic miracle worker. Like, we'll figure out finances. Like, it'll be fine. So I'm like, okay. So I think we go on another call. And then, yeah, I mean, the rest is history. We signed up, we went for it. And then I don't regret 1 millisecond of it because I went from like being like this to just being like, okay, I can party rock again. Like, I can be myself. I can be a fun mom. Like, I can be cool, down with the kids, you know, like the mom I wanted to be. And oh my God, my marriage changed like that. Like, I was, before BeBaby, I was grouchy. I was resentful because in my mind, I'm like, you get to go away for 2 full weeks and have like a break. It's basically a vacation. Like, and I'm here all the time, all day, every day. And then, well, when I had BeBaby behind me, all that was gone. I was like, okay, bye, Felicia. Have fun working. See you in 2 weeks. I got the kids. Like, when Bryn got to that 4-month regression, I'm like, whatever, like, that doesn't matter. Because I had my sleep consultant there. Brooke needed to potty train. That's fine. Because I have my sleep consultant, you know, like we started Bryn on solids and I did baby-led weaning this time. Whereas with Brooke, I was like, hey, these have to be pureed as pureed can be. So she doesn't choke and she doesn't puke. And, you know, whereas Bryn, I'm like, here's a cucumber, good luck. You know, like, it's just completely different because I have all this knowledge with the library that I didn't know about before. And Christy, I'm going to try your technique of being like, Nolan, let's run to the city for X, Y, and Z. And then I'm going to trap him in there so he can listen to whatever I want him to listen to. But yeah, it's kind of like, Nolan, did you know this? And then if he goes, well, no, I don't. And he starts to argue. I'm like, no, it's in the BeBaby library. And he's like, well, all right, then I believe you. Like, he's very much like, I have to have like something to back me up or he doesn't believe me. So no, ever since BeBaby, our sex life is better, because that was like non-existent. I was like, I'm sorry, you want a what? When? No.
That's what got us in this mess, remember?
Exactly. I'm like, she's going to be up in like 3 hours. I'm off to bed. Bye. Like, we had no time in the evening. Bryn, even for the first, like, I guess 2.5, maybe 3 months, I was holding her all the time. She wouldn't sleep in her bassinet. And we signed up with BeBaby, I think when Bryn was either 1.5 months or 2 months. So even though Bryn couldn't be sleep trained at that point because she was too young, they gave me like the stepping stones and the groundwork to work with her, so that when she was old enough to be sleep trained, we just started it, and it was just like smooth as butter. Like, it just went so easily. And I honestly, the first night that I put Bryn in her bassinet and I had time to myself, my husband was out of town, and I kind of sat on the couch and I was like, what do I do now? Like, this is kind of boring. I'm like, wait a minute, Netflix. And I put on, like my reality TV that you can't watch when the kids are awake. And I had a drink and I had a snack that I would never want to share with my kids. And it was fantastic to have that time to myself, eating my chocolate bars that I don't have to share with anybody. Yeah, it was fantastic. And then now I miss my husband when he's gone, obviously, who doesn't? But I don't dread him leaving. I don't worry about like, oh my God, I'm going to be doing this all by myself. Now I'm just kind of like, who decided that I was old enough and responsible enough to do this? Like, wait a minute. When did I become an adult? I don't really get it. But yeah.
And for adulthood.
Yeah. Like, adulting isn't overly fun, but it's way more fun when you have BeBaby and the family behind you, because even like if I'm having a rough day, I can message any one of you and just be like, okay, my day sucks. And then you guys cheer me up. Like, it's great. And then when I had first hired my sleep consultant when Brooke was 18 months old, I had really caught an interest, because I'm like, obviously other moms are going through this and this is hard. If I could help another parent or another mom out of this situation, that would be fantastic. And so I messaged her about it, and she said, no, like, if you want to become a sleep consultant in Saskatchewan on your own, it's very difficult. It's not easy to do. Like, I don't recommend it. So I'm like, okay. So then I kept going with hygiene. But yeah, the pandemic hit and everything like that, everything changed in hygiene. Like, you're basically in a hazmat suit to clean people's teeth at this point. And I sweat really easy. So I was like a hot mess every day, and it was uncomfortable, and I was grouchy and I hated it. And then I was like, interesting. So then I remember I asked Sam, like, do you like hire people, or like, how does this work? And then, yeah, I was like, cool, let's do this then, because absolutely, I've always wanted to be in a field where I'm helping people, whether that be, cleaning people's teeth, or I wish I could be a nurse, but I do not have the tummy to be a nurse. Like, that would be bad, but just something to genuinely help. Like, and I was like, Nolan, like, this is my calling. I just feel like, this is like, when I'm doing this, I'm at home, like, it makes so much sense. I struggled with it so hard and for so long, and it was so awful. And if I can help even one other mom or dad get out of that rut and fix whatever needs to be fixing, sign me up, because that would it would be like you go to work and you have a purpose every single day. So I'm excited to wake up every morning. I'm excited. I love these seminars every day. I'm like, yes, live, let's go. Like, I just love it. And yeah, I just love helping people and changing people's lives. And I'm just very grateful for this opportunity.